All right, let's dive straight into this explainer of Lecture 21b. Today, we're mapping out Imam Ali's incredibly vivid end times narrations, specifically focusing on the cities along the rivers of Iraq. We're tracing a very specific and honestly chillingly detailed prophetic geography here. We're going to look at these ancient texts that describe the fates of major historical hubs, cities that were destined for staggering wealth, profound corruption, and ultimately absolute destruction.
Now, rather than hitting you with a standard agenda, I actually want to skip that and jump right into this visceral, haunting image. It totally anchors our entire geographic journey today as we move from south to north. This quote from Imam Ali pops up across multiple independent narrations in various Hadith collections. He's describing a massive, sprawling metropolis that just gets completely swallowed by a deep sea, with literally nothing left but the upper balconies of its grand mosque protruding above the water. It's a striking, apocalyptic image, and it perfectly sets the tone for everything we're about to uncover.
Movement 1. Basra, the drowned city.
So we're starting our journey down south in Basra. The texts explicitly call this the overturned city because it harbors this massive concentration of the world's tribulations. But here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. The Sunni scholar Ibn Abi al-Hadid, who lived centuries after these words were spoken, actually confirmed that the first two of its prophesied drownings already happened in history, exactly as predicted. He documented that during the days of Al-Qadir Billah and Al-Qayyim Bi'amr Allah, floodwaters from the Sea of Fars totally devastated the houses of Basra. The whole city drowned, and just as he noted, nothing remained except its grand mosque sticking out of the water like the breast of a bird. It's spot on. But the prophecy doesn't end there, right? It clearly states that the third and final drowning is yet to come in the end times, where Basra is turned into a permanent deep sea.
But listen, before that final, permanent sinking even happens, the city has to endure a period of just immense military terror. The narrations warn us about a ruthless, tyrannical figure known as the Sufyani, who will violently enter Basra 3 distinct times. In each of these entries is a clear step in a sequence of destruction. So in the first entry, he humiliates the mighty and the powerful elites. By the second, the violence really escalates into the capture and enslavement of women. And then by the third, the city is left utterly desolate, totally ravaged by a drawn sword and unavenged deaths.
And the way the texts describe this approaching force is just brilliant. It illustrates the sheer, eerie terror of it all. We're talking about an army so stealthy and strange that it arrives literally without a sound. The military unit moves without kicking up any dust. There's no clanking of bits, no neighing of horses. It says their feet stir up the earth strangely, like the feet of ostriches. They strike the inhabitants suddenly, bringing what the text vividly calls red death and dusty hunger. It is a massive psychological nightmare, just as much as a physical one.
Movement 2. Wasit, the doomed midpoint.
Okay, moving northward up the river systems, we hit Wasit, which was a major city built by al-Hajjaj. The narrations give us this incredibly precise chronological and geographical path. The conqueror's route marches directly from Basra, up through Wasit, and eventually points toward Baghdad. Once the ruin of Basra is complete, these invading forces push into Wasit and basically do the exact same thing to it, before pressing even further north. It's a very methodical, step-by-step dismantling of the Iraqi river cities. Now, the crucial takeaway here is that Wasit, whose very name literally translates to midpoint, since it sits exactly 50 farsakhs between Basra and Kufa, suffers a watery fate that perfectly mirrors Basra. Imam Ali states it plainly. As for Wasit, the water will overwhelm it. And when you look at it geographically, Wasit sits directly between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. So when the prophecy says water overwhelms it, we know it isn't just symbolic language. It is a highly plausible, geographically grounded disaster waiting to happen, exactly like what played out downstream.
Movement 3. Al-Zawraa, the city of excess.
Our journey culminates even further north in Al-Zawraa, which historically is identified as the western side of Baghdad, built by the Abbasids to be their grand imperial capital. Now, Imam Ali's Pearl Sermon describes a breathtaking metropolis built right between the Tigris and the Euphrates, heavily fortified and just dripping with unprecedented material wealth. He describes a city dominated by teak, juniper, and pine, absolutely glittering with gold, silver, lapis lazuli, marble, and ivory. It is a portrait of absolute, unbridled material excess, a city built not just to live in, but as a towering monument to human arrogance and imperial vanity. And just take a look at this unbelievable roster from the texts.
24 successive kings from the Banu Shayban prophesied to rule this city. The level of detail here is staggering. The text literally lists them all out, in order by their descriptive epithets. It kicks off in blood with al-Safa, the shedder of blood, and then just moves through this wild dynasty of vanity and chaos. You have names translating to the deceitful, the frivolous, the rabid, and the deposed. It's a meticulously detailed prophecy of an entire dynastic timeline, finally wrapping up with the 24th king al-Gayuk, the helper. Which brings us to movement 4, Al-Zawraa, the corruption. Because beneath all that glittering gold and lapis lazuli, Imam Ali's narrations reveal a city that is totally rotting from the inside out. The moral compass is entirely shattered. The texts explicitly juxtapose this staggering architectural beauty right alongside a society consumed by wicked leaders, unnatural desires, and ultimately widespread grief and long weeping. You see a society that literally takes the city as a house of amusement and play, completely ignoring the growing rot. It's a place of tyrannical injustice, terrifying fear, ruled by treacherous ministers and immoral reciters. They don't enjoin good, they don't forbid evil. And the prophecy makes it crystal clear. This level of societal decay, it can't sustain itself. It practically invites absolute ruin. And that leads us right into movement 5, Baghdad and the Mongol invasion. That kind of moral decay sets the stage for what is arguably the most historically verifiable and honestly brutal cataclysm in all of these narrations. A profound tragedy strikes from the east. The sources describe this horrifying invading force descending upon Al-Zawraa, led by a loud-voiced king with a powerful assault who just conquers every single city in his path. And the physical description in the text is so incredibly specific. It describes a people with small eyes, their faces wide and flat like hammered shields, wearing clothing made of iron, hairless and beardless, with mercy entirely stripped from their hearts. They slaughter the sons, capture the innocent, and bring this mighty city to its knees. And this is where the apocalyptic vision slams right into verifiable history, because these vivid descriptions perfectly align with the devastating Mongol invasion that brought the Islamic Golden Age to a bloody halt. In the texts, this invading group is referred to as the Banu Kantor. When the Mongol hordes, led by Hulagu Khan, breached the walls of Baghdad in the 13th century, they matched this physical and behavioral description to a terrifying degree. They literally stripped the city of its lapis lazuli and gold, leaving behind nothing but rivers of blood and ink. So when you look at how closely these texts mapped onto history, it really leaves us asking, which of these looming storms is already quietly marching toward us? Think about it. We've seen Ibn Abi al-Hadid confirm the first 2 drownings of Basra. We've seen the historical reality of those 24 kings. We've perfectly matched the terrifying Banu Qantor to the Mongols' sack of Baghdad. These aren't just vague myths. They are literal historical roadmaps. So if the first chapters of this prophetic geography played out exactly as described, what exactly should we expect when the final waters begin to rise?